Are we live?
Yes, we
Hello.
are.
Where is Abuzar?
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me, Abuzar?
Yeah, I can.
Good.
Okay.
So let's start.
Surely.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you, Abuzar? How are you, Fatma? How is everyone in our panel? All good.
Thank
We're
you.
great. Thank you so much.
So, all right, we are so excited for this webinar. So, let's have an introduction first. My name is Mohammed Ali. I'm a co-founder of Cyberways. I have today exciting guest, Mr. Abuzar. He's the founder of Swift, the GRC automation tool, which we have been discussing since almost half an year now. And I have Fatma, the channel manager of Cyberways. She'll be co-hosting with me this seminar. And all right, so let's start. So simplified a unified security platform, GRC automation Swift. So as everybody knows that it's a big headache nowadays for the organizations, for the governance, risk, and compliance to automate and have a single platform where it will be easy for the cybersecurity heads to manage the framework, the policies, and everything, and to automate the cybersecurity posture in a unified platform. So we are so excited that Cyberways working with Swift to launching this tool. And by the way, we all will be waiting for you at JISEC. We'll be officially launching Swift at JISEC on 5th of May, and Swift will be with us in the hall number 3. So we will be discussing, we'll be showcasing. So the details, demos will be there. But before that, the pre-JISEC readiness, we decided to have a demo of Swift and have go through the importance of this tool. So I will not take much time because I want all of our attendees to go through and see the demo. And so I will hand it over to Abuzar. Abuzar, the stage is on you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the introduction, Ali. Uh, and I appreciate for the introduction and having me on stage to discuss about the importance of security platforms and why it is becoming increasingly important for the businesses to have a single pane of management of their whole cybersecurity programs. There's been a recent study by IBM and Palo Alto in early 2025, which discusses the idea of having the platformization of security. So when we talk about security, a lot of companies, just sees the security as a compliance-related matter, or some companies or organization just sees it as something they have to deal with as one of the challenge in vulnerability assessment and penetration testing results and stuff. But it's a bigger issue. We have many layers of security and infrastructure which connects at one single point. And these splitted silos and having multiple layers of complexity in medium large enterprises, uh, a typical security team or organization has to deal with somewhere around 83 different tools, which assesses their vulnerabilities, application related infrastructure, cloud, monitoring systems, and connecting the dots could become really difficult. And as the organization grows, this become a bigger challenge for the organizations to make sense of all that data, and bringing it all together at one single place. So this is why we conceptualized this whole Swift thing, where we are trying to solve this problem by platformization of all the security tooling at one single place, whether it's the first party risk, the third party, the compliance, your people, or your supply chain. It has to come under one single management or one single pane of glass, so that the CISOs of the modern organizations can see where their boundaries are, whether it's their internal boundaries or their external exposure of their assets. So this is why we really want to emphasize on this issue, so that we can connect the dots, bring the data, and make it real time. Historically, the security operation has been very data driven, and the risk management and governance and compliance has never been data driven. So majority of the organizations that we work with, they uh, they mostly rely on spreadsheets and operating their governance and risk and compliance in very manual fashion, and it never contextualizes the whole risk landscape for them. So what threats they are exposed to, what compliance they are lacking whenever they deal with multi-regulatory environments. As the organization grows, they have to increase their capacity to deal with multiple controls and multiple standards, and that complexity adds to their businesses as well, that they are not much aware of their direct and indirect risks. And uh, um, and without having data backing that all the information, whether their control effectiveness is as per the requirements for the compliance, and their control effectiveness also measures the risk according to their risk thresholds, it never becomes very visible for the organizations. And this is why it's becoming more important to solve that fragmented security tooling approach, to bring one single pane of glass, by integrating all your vulnerabilities, all your gaps in, whether they are compliance gaps, their risk gaps, to understand where a company or organization stands at any given moment, so that they can quantifiably reduce it to achieve their security targets and align them with the business goals. The cohesive strategy should be centralization, first of all, a unified security architecture, so that you can bring in any data regardless of what kind of silos you are dealing with, whether it's the infrastructure, it's your public cloud, your private cloud, your hybrid cloud systems, your people, your policy governance, and your compliance data. Everything needs to be at one single place at first. Once you lay the foundations, we can see miracle happening, to understand the overall one single pane of glass of the organization, that where they uh, what risk they have to reduce, what they need to prioritize. And it aligns very much with the project management as well, so that they can understand what vulnerabilities needs to be reduced. And one important thing is, what we have learned working with the customers is that uh, the companies, they typically deal with 30 to 50 different security and infrastructure tools. And the one of the biggest challenge is understanding whether their return on investments, whether they are fully capitalizing on their return on investments or not. So it's very important for the CISOs, the modern chief information security officers, to also understand whether the investments they are making in a certain areas, whether it's application security, infrastructure security, whether they are implementing endpoint security, vulnerability assessments, penetration testings, and first-party supply chain risks, they have to ensure that their return on investments are giving them the maximum value. And this cannot be possible if you have not connected the dots between all the different layers of your organization. And ultimately, it provides you with a proactive approach which you can implement in your organization. And you reduce your backlog in security debt, and finally be able to see that whenever a new threat or whenever a new risk emerges, you can respond to it immediately, rather than being a sitting duck and just having the hackers to tell you that now you are compromised and you have to deal with something. So the concept of the platformization is, first of all, to understand the organization posture, where they stand, what priorities do they have, what kind of infrastructure do they deal with? Do they have infrastructure in their private cloud, in their public cloud, and hybrid cloud infrastructure? They need to understand their boundaries, where they operate in their applications, their application security stack, and the weakest link in security is always the people. So you need to understand how compliant your people are. Are they compliant with the policies? Are they ensuring that whatever your security policies are, they are adhering to the policies in both technical and in human manner? So it's really important to bring everything together, and understanding the context of the organization is really important. So this is where that one size fits all approach doesn't really work with such kind of scenario. So you have to create a skeleton which pretty much supports everything, and then the customizations are based on the customer own requirements, so that they can contextually implement the organization's requirements that this seems important. Um, and that always should has to align with the organization's main business, because they have to maximize the return on investments on security, and every blind spots has to be covered within when it comes to detecting the assets and identifying their vulnerabilities and identifying their weaknesses, and be able to fix them whenever it's important to do so. So laying the foundations are important, and majority of the time the foundations are based on compliance with whatever commitments do they have in regulatory environments, and also their best practices. And we build um, uh, the whole building upon that foundation, which is your compliance, your risk management, and empowering that with the data driven approach, and to detect the gaps in runtime, and resolve those gaps, and reduce the risk however they emerge. And then you keep adding the security layers and the integration of data from different sources, whether they are coming from your third parties, your suppliers, your first party, your external exposure, your exposed endpoints. You just keep adding the data, and the context keeps evolving. So it's really important that we are living in the AI era now, and cybersecurity, especially governance, compliance, and risk, is lagging a lot behind, because of the lack of contextualization, and the increased complexity in corporate environments, or in the enterprise environments, that they have so much data to work with, and so little tooling, or so little possibilities to bring everything together. And ultimately, any business, they only do things when they see the benefits, and this is exactly what the platformization can provide. Uh, it can it can provide with up to 101% return on investments when the platformization brings everything together, and it provides you with the single pane of glass, so that the modern CISOs and the people who are responsible for security can actually see and connect the dots with every single thing in the organization security program, whether it's reducing the cost of overall cost of whether it's overall cost of operations, whether it's the time that's spent on detection, the audit cost due to the contextualization, and consolidation of everything, the cost of compliance, and the cost of the audits, it reduces significantly. And it it reduces the time of detection of any new risk from 72 days into a couple of minutes. As a new threat emerges, it gets it gets detected. And it's not just that the engineering team has the visibility around it, but the CISOs, the chief information security officers, or the security managers has the visibility. So they can prioritize whether when a risk needs to be reduced. So it aligns with your business goals. And there are real world impacts of lowering down the operational cost, improving the compliance. And one of the really important thing to understand is many organizations of medium, large sizes, they have to deal with a lot of local regulatory compliance, and the indirect risk of such kind of non-compliance could be heavy fines, and organizations end up losing their license to operate. And typically these kind of context is never added to the cybersecurity. And in the world which is increasingly depending on data and processing of data by your own organization, your first party, your third parties, and their end parties, if your business relies on the SaaS environments, it becomes increasingly impossible to understand how where the organization is heading towards and where your data is sitting. And that's where your boundaries becomes very blurry in with regards when it comes to your data processing. And every regulatory environment has now the requirements to maintain the privacy of the data, and have respect for the data processing. And in order to do so, you always need to understand your boundaries, and you have to detect the risk as early as possible, whether you do it by the threat intelligence, whether you do it by the gap assessments. And this can only be possible if we do it continuously rather than being reactive, and just detect the vulnerabilities and anomalies once a quarter. It has to be continuous, it has to be in runtime, and it has to be notifying at every single layer of the organization. When it comes to the organization where they have different silos. For example, we've worked with the customers who work in financial industries. So what we have learned working with such kind of customers is that uh, they have separate infrastructure teams, and within the infrastructure they have different silos. Some people are working on just the networking layer, the cloud layer, the application layer, the cloud, the hybrid cloud, and public cloud. There are different type of teams who work independently on different type of infrastructure. Let alone we haven't really touched the code, that we haven't really explored yet the people. So and the third parties, and wherever the SaaS applications are hosted. So all these dependencies needs to be first addressed before we can understand the organization risk. And a single blind spot can end up in a huge disaster. So this is why it's really important to bring everything together, contextualize it, understand your regulatory requirements, understand your direct and indirect risk. So direct risk could be easily be calculated based on your assets and how your assets are performing, and your exposure factors towards your threats. But when it comes to your third parties and their SaaS, you have to continuously monitor their threat factors, their exposure factors, and to contextualize based on how your first party assets are directly or indirectly uh, uh, connected with the third parties. So overall, that's the whole crux of the conversation, which is we need to understand the boundaries, we need to understand the regulatory commitments, and how much of the impact of non-compliance could be. The lack of governance could lead you into heavy fines. The lack of compliance could lead you into losing your licenses to operate. The lack of visibility can lead you into major incidents, which can potentially lose productivity, can end up in denial of services, and many other type of direct risks. And and this is why Swift has taken on this challenge to solve this issue for the enterprises who are being underserved and haven't got that contextualized data-driven approach towards handling their governance, risk, and compliance, and making it data-driven rather than a reactive spreadsheet-based approach to just deal with the compliance and their annual audits.
Thank you so much, Abazar. So, and thank you so much for that presentation. Now we move on to the question and answers. For all the viewers, you can start posting your questions in the Q&A section. So for our first question, Abuzar, can you share examples of how organizations effectively align GRC strategies with business objectives and digital transformation initiatives? This is from Mr. Arif Ali.
So the GRC strategies, when it comes to aligning them with the business objectives, the business first needs to understand what are the risks of not complying or not having an effective governance on, or not having good policies to rule the organization, or to run the security programs. So when we take the risk-driven approach, we can really align the business objectives with their security programs. And when we understand the regulatory commitments and regulatory landscape that one business has to deal with, it becomes really clear and transparent for the security teams or the governance and compliance teams to align the business goals and objectives with the digital transformation initiatives.
Thank you so much. So I'll mark that as answered. And then on to our next question from Ms. Sumaya Ihsan. How can continuous monitoring and real-time risk management improve decision-making in a GRC program?
So we can look at it from two different perspectives. First of all, the data-driven approach first allows you to align your risk management strategy to your business strategies. So if we look at how the businesses operates in this very modern and fast-paced era, we can't just sit on and wait for a quarter before a vulnerability assessment report comes in and react on it. If you cannot take a proactive approach towards identifying new risks in your organizational assets, we can't take the effective decision. So the decision making has to be fast, it has to be data driven, and without having a continuous monitoring of your risk in a runtime, it's not possible. So it impacts your decision making and empowering your GRC programs, and that's why it's really important.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Ms. Sumaya, and I think that's very insightful. So I'll mark this as answered, and then we move on to another question from Ira Kakao. Mm-hmm. What are some key challenges organizations face when integrating GRC frameworks across multi-cloud or hybrid infrastructures?
Yeah, it's my so first of all, we need to understand why it's one of the biggest problem is because a lot of organization relies on their hybrid cloud environments, and many modern organization has to be very fast paced with regards to their application delivery and application development processes. So in order to do so, they subscribe for cloud services, and while having their on premise data centers or hybrid infrastructures. And the silos splits or fragments while when they subscribe for different type of infrastructures to host and deliver their applications, and it just adds another pane of glass to look at your emerging threats or emerging risks in your organization. So the biggest challenge is to have one single platform or one single pane of glass or point of view of how you are performing in your hybrid cloud environment. And the biggest challenge is in current security vendor landscape is majority of vendors, they have their specialized areas, whether they deal in public cloud or in private cloud. The hybrid cloud approach hasn't been taken off, but the statistics suggest that in this new AI era that we are currently transitioning into, the hybrid cloud is going to become the next norm for majority of the organizations. More and more organizations will be hosting their own data centers, and having one pane of glass visibility, single pane of glass visibility across your hybrid cloud infrastructure is going to become a key challenge for the organizations to deal with, and to integrate the frameworks for their regulatory commitments, their AI governance, and their security governance overall.
Perfect. Thank you. Marking that as answered, I hope that addresses your concern, Ira. And on our next question from Mr. Sheikh Amanuddin. How does threat intelligence factor into enterprise GRC practices today?
It's really important to have threat intel integrated directly into your GRC programs, because the risk always evolves, and one of the major components and the key component of measuring the risk is your threat landscape. And the threat intel has to be very dynamic and has to be up to date to uh, to measure your risk in runtime, to make it data driven, to understand your risk, how they are performing, and how it changes dynamically. And this is why threat intel is not just a thing which helps with the runtime detection of the incidents, and it but it's also becoming increasingly important to integrate your threat intel and the threat factors into your GRC program, so that the risk calculation can become more effective and the measurement is becomes more precise. So it's very important to have the threat intel directly feeding into your GRC programs.
Awesome. Now let's move to another question from Mr. Mohammed Jawad.
Mhm.
What roles does automation play in streamlining compliance activities like audits, evidence collection, and reporting?
There's a very simple answer to this question. In majority of the organizations, they just see compliance as something they have to deal with once a year, and just going through the audits, it becomes their compliance problem. And the automated detection of compliance gaps are really important, and the people who are responsible for compliance needs to see whenever and wherever the compliance gaps are emerging in their organization, and how it's affecting their control effectiveness measurement, I would say. So evidence collection is just one part of it, but measuring the control effectiveness is really important in runtime. So um, if it's adding to your exposure factor, And if your review is 3 months apart, you just becomes a sitting duck, not just for failing your compliance, but the actual security gap could end up in a bigger disaster, and that could lead you into losing your compliance certificate from your provider. So this is why making it real time, automated by data collection, or evidence collection. It's not just once in a year or once in a quarter activity, but it needs to be real time, and it streamlines your security governance programs with your IT security or security programs overall, and it helps the CISOs or security managers to have a runtime visibility around what's going on in their organization.
Thank you. Now we move on to another question from Asad Sophie. He says, thank you for an interesting awareness on GRC strategy and concepts. Could you please explain what are some emerging risks that the organization should proactively account for in their risk assessment and mitigation?
Um, so the emerging risks are obviously the AI, the adoption of artificial intelligence in the organizations, and how we control the usage of AI, uh, especially the tools like the OpenAI and the tools. Those are not governed by the organizations, and having end users access to those kind of tools could end up in losing a lot of personal data, intellectual property data, or just adding to your exposure factor to your code, to your personal information, and different kind of other kind of threats. And one of the key element to understand this threat is that security is should always be the business enabler. We should not be blocking people from doing things. So governing AI uh, is going to be the bigger challenge going forward, and aligning those AI related threats and AI related risk to your governance risk and compliance strategies are going to be really going to become really important. And how we utilize the AI, how we utilize these these revolutionizing technology is really important, and aligning the governance with security governance is going to be a key challenge for the organization in foreseeable future. And how we fix it, we govern it effectively, we define the boundaries, and we make those utilizing of AI more official within the organizations, and controlling how the organization data ends up in AI tools is very important. And again, it comes down to how you comply with the AI governance policies. So overall strategies would have to be aligned with the GRC programs, especially in this for the AI related frameworks and standards.
Thank you very much. Next question would be from, again, Mr. Mohammed Jawad. Please elaborate more on how does your platform will help CISOs in managing the third-party risk management, and how it is different from existing solutions available in the market.
So, when it comes to the third party risk management or supply chain risk management, we need to understand the concept why we do it first. And the obvious reason is the third parties, if they host your data, if your organization depends on that business for their critical operations, you need to take that kind of risk, accounted for in your business. And the CISOs needs to understand how the third party risks can impact their first party, their internal organization's internal compliance posture. So typically, if you look at the current security vendor landscape, there this is another silo which just gets added to the organization's complexity. So the problem emerges when you have to deal with your first party risk and first party compliance, which is currently not very data driven separately from your third parties. Your question is your exposure management. And with a lot of SaaS adoption, you never get to understand where your data resides. And this is where my our key concept behind behind Swift is to contextualize and bring everything together, and creating one single platform for your security management can help organizations and CISOs a lot to uh, to have one single pane of glass, whether it's your first party risk or your third party risk or your nth party risk. So it's all about bringing everything together and understanding how your first party, third party risk and compliance can affect your organization's overall posture. So that's how we are helping the organizations to consolidate everything, to be able to see one single dashboard rather than having to deal with 25.
Amazing. So I think we're down to our last question. Sorry. Yeah, we have one last question from Mr. Yasser Altaf. How well-defined KPIs in GRC activities helps build a proactive and effective approach to managing risk and governance?
So it all comes down to the first step when we start building a security program. What is most important? So unfortunately, in majority of the organization, it's the whole scenario is upside down. We usually start with the tooling. We usually start with the with implementation of tools and infrastructure rather than using a systematic approach. So when we implement the governance at the top of your security program, we have a clear understanding and objectives of where the organization needs to head, and defining those governance policies are as important as implementing the tooling, or I would say it's more important, so that we have a clear objective what needs to be done, and those governance policies aligns with the organization's business KPIs and their organizational KPIs, and then making it proactive in terms of gap detections, in terms of risk assessments, proactive and continuous risk assessment can can uh, can have a positive impact on your risk management and implementing that governance policies in actual on your actual business assets. So that's why the first most important layer of governance is if it is well defined, it effectively has a trickle down effect, top down effect on all your compliance and risk management programs.
Thank you very much. I hope all the answers were, I hope all the answers addressed the queries from the audience. And thank you for that insight. I think my last question would just be, what is your preparation for JISEC?
We will be exhibiting at JISEC with Cyberbase in Dubai, second week of May, and I hope to see a lot of you guys in person in JISEC.
And yes, we're excited to have Swift together with us in our JISEC booth, which will be in Hall 3 in Hall 3 in stand E30. And yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that's happening. Also, there's also activities that Cyberways will be hosting. We are going to host series of podcasts during the event and also before the event. and I hope you could make time to visit that in the Cyber Studio and also drop by our booth in E30. And once again, thank you so much for a very insightful presentation of Cywift. We're very excited for your official launch, and we're excited for the future ahead with you. Thank you so much for your time, for everyone who's attended this session.
Pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you all have a good day. Bye.